Yeah, Derek Queen and Zion Williamson look great together. Love it. Wonderful. But if the Pelicans take that as a sign to make a win now move, that would be a massive mistake. I'll tell you why in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with you on this Friday, final show of the week. My final show for a couple of weeks. I'll be back. I'll tell you more about that if you haven't already heard in a little bit here. But I want to get into this Pelicans team. Zion Williamson and Derek Queen looking good. Maybe the best game we've seen from this team in the loss against the Denver Nuggets. But this team, under no circumstances, is ready to make a win now move for a variety of reasons. And I'm going to lay them all out in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. I want to look at some differences under James Borrego because you're starting to see some things come to the forefront that he's doing that I find pretty interesting, but also some things not different. That says a lot about the players too. And then we'll look at a little bit more of Zion Williamson and Derek Queen and kind of attendance stuff with this team as well in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join over 12,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. Become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. If you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. You can also watch us on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Same place you watch your Pelicans play. I think you might want to be watching them more if you haven't been already. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, the #1 sports podcast network. So let's get into this idea of a win now trade. I've talked a lot about two timelines for this team. You've kind of got the young growth approach, and then the other side where it's like, well, let's just try and win now behind Zion Williamson. You know, if you really want to be a title contender, a true playoff team this year, it's an uphill battle no matter what, just to get into the play-in tournament. I've seen people say, oh, they're only 3.5 games out of the play-in tournament. That is a very misleading thing to put out there right now. And I think that's where I want to kind of frame this discussion around. Saying, no, they're only 3.5 games out of the play-in tournament spot of the 10th seed here. It's further than you think. Because that is like, oh, hey, they're kind of close. And maybe they'll be playing better at the end of the season and they can get into the postseason through the play-in tournament. And then all of a sudden it's a playoff year and we feel better, right? 3.5 games this early on in the season is actually kind of further away than you might think here. The Pelicans right now have a winning percentage of .133. 133. The Utah Jazz, currently in the 10th spot, have a winning percentage of 357. That's a significant difference over the course of a season. You know, even though 357, right? 35.7% out of 82 games. We'll do the math here. 0.357 comes to about, let's call it a 30-win season, could potentially get you into the play-in tournament as it stands right now. Pelicans would need to win 28 more games to do that. That's not a particularly easy thing to do for a team that is 2-13 right now. When you factor that in, there's 67 games left. They've already won 2 games, so out of this kind of like 60, you basically need to get 20, at that point, 28 wins out of 67 games, right? That's a record of 28-39 the rest of the way. The Pelicans don't even look close to that kind of team here. You're still a ways off, and that's if this holds. I would imagine the Los Angeles Clippers will get better from 4-10, 1 game back of the Jazz for the 10th seed and improve. And that it's not going to just take a 30-win season to get into the play-in tournament. You're still looking at around 500, in my opinion. Maybe a tick below that. You could get 39 wins, 38 wins, something along those lines. But if there's 67 games remaining and you need to get to 38 wins, so that's 36 more wins for New Orleans here, they would need to go 36-31 the rest of the way. This team doesn't feel like they're going to be doing that. Even with some of the changes Borrego's making, and we'll look at those next, even with Derek Queen and Zion Williamson looking good, That's probably not going to happen. So while, yeah, they're technically 3.5 games out of the 10th seed, they're actually further away than that. And so to me, that screams they shouldn't make a win now move for a couple of reasons. One, the math doesn't quite work out. But we don't fully know if all of this is going to work just yet. Queen and Zion, early returns look good. I will give you that. But it's also a very small sample size here. And a lot of this was due to them coming back in the fourth quarter against the Denver Nuggets, who had such a big lead, they took their foot off the gas. So they're kind of garbage time minutes that you don't want to read too much into. The starting lineup in that game that we all wanted to see, Zion Williamson, Derik Queen, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, Jeremiah Fears, had a net rating of plus 5.1. It's not bad. Not elite, but not bad. Pretty good, actually. But plus minus, they were a 0 in the game, so they weren't ended up winning their minutes here. So there's some things to like, but some things to be concerned about it. There's also larger questions of, can Zion Williamson actually stay healthy and carry you? If he doesn't, you make a win now move, it all falls apart and you wasted future assets. And that's what this kind of comes down to is, do you trust this team to trade away future first round picks? The way Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver, the way they are running the team, do you trust them to do that sort of thing right now? You can like Derik Queen, Jeremiah Fears. I like both of them. Literally bought the fiance a Queen jersey the other night. I bought a Fears jersey. And we'll be rocking those on the honeymoon at some point, I'm sure. But the other process of trading for Jordan Poole, not necessarily great. That might be called the Saddiq Bey trade at this point in time. There's questions about how they are operating. Sherman Dew of the In the Know Substack and podcast put out, the growing influence of Joe Dumars' son, who might not really be qualified to do all of this. It's not great I still don't have a level of trust in this team going forward. I don't trust Zion. I don't trust the front office. We don't know what they're going to do with the coaching search and all of that just yet. So that all says to me, don't make any sort of win now move where you have to give up future draft capital. These guys actually might be able to draft. I'll give them that. So keep the picks so that you can use those picks to draft the guys that you need. That's what I want to see this team doing. That is what would be the smartest thing, is a wait and see approach. You can ride this up until the trade deadline. And at the trade deadline, you can also just do nothing. You can see how the rest of the season plays out. Maybe Zion Williamson and these guys do somehow carry you to the play-in tournament. Maybe I'm wrong on what it's going to take. It's a possibility, I think. And if they do that, great. You can just ride the season out and make decisions off of there, but maybe don't try and escalate it. This team has perpetually been in win now mode. From the moment they drafted Anthony Davis, win now behind him, even though at times he wasn't ready to carry the team. Zion Williamson, win now, even though he wasn't ready for that sort of thing just yet. There is something to be said for just letting natural growth happen and not trying to pour fire, gasoline on the fire to make it grow bigger, because sometimes that ends up burning you, as it has done here in New Orleans. And for a small market that does need to have some sustainability, young guys on rookie deals is the best way to go about doing that. If they had Nickeil Alexander-Walker instead of CJ McCollum in that deal right now, how do things look? Then again, Nickeil was probably never going to turn into the player that he has become here in New Orleans, so that's worth keeping in mind. Same for Dyson Daniels. But look at how much long-term sustained success you could have, an ability to handle guys coming up for big contracts. You can let one of them walk then, because you have the next group of young guys waiting in the wings. That's what New Orleans, I think, needs to at least think about right now. But do I trust this team not to make a win now move? Not necessarily. They might be looking at this and be like, we got to hit the phones and let's do something. If there was going to be a team that made a trade right now, that was a win now move, you'd say it is the New Orleans Pelicans. And I mean right now, no one makes trades right now, but I could see this team just somehow doing it based on the way that they're operating. I don't like that idea. There is something here with Fears, with Queen, with or without Zion Williamson. Don't do anything that kind of jeopardizes that, in my opinion, even if that means not making the playoffs. Because look, when you do that anyway, it doesn't mean you make the playoffs as is. We've seen that here in New Orleans, where you just don't get back-to-back playoff years despite constantly being in win-now mode. There's a different approach, I think, that needs to be taken this year. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments down below. So coming up next, Let's look at actual differences and some changes with James Borrego as the head coach. We're going to look at some of the stats. I want to look at how some of the guys are being used offensively too. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Quo. Let's talk about something every business owner knows too well: missed calls. When a customer tries to reach you and you can't get through, that's money slipping away. Quo, spelled Quo, is the smarter way to run your business communications so you never miss an opportunity. Quo is the #1 business phone system built for 2025, not 1995. It's simple, modern, and designed to help you communicate faster, look more professional, and stay connected wherever you're working. I love that Quo works right from an app on your phone or computer, no extra devices, no clunky landlines. And if you can't answer, Quo's AI agent jumps in. It can qualify leads, route calls, and make sure no customer is ever left hanging, even after hours. And your whole team can share one number and collaborate on calls and texts like a shared inbox, which means every customer gets help faster. It makes small businesses feel bigger and big businesses feel more efficient. No wonder over 90,000 businesses are already using Quo. Try Quo for free at quo.com/lockedonnba. That's quo.com/lockedonnba. And yes, you can even keep your existing number. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by DoorDash. The NBA season is heating up, and DoorDash has found the perfect way to keep fans in their bag all season long. So whether you're watching for the highlights, your fantasy team, or just your favorite player, DoorDash makes every game night even better. DoorDash is the official on-demand delivery platform of the NBA, and they're celebrating with something called the Bag Drop. Every time an NBA player scores 50 points in a game, DoorDash drops 50% off your order with Dash Pass the next day, and you're automatically entered for a chance to win the ultimate fan bag. We're talking player-inspired drip, exclusive gear, stuff you're just going to actually want. And I love that with DoorDash, it's not just food. You can have everything: snacks, drinks, headphones, socks if you're cold, all delivered. So the next time someone goes off for 50, use promo code NBA50 the next day to get 50% off on DoorDash with Dash Pass, plus your shot at the Bag Drop. Dash Pass members only 50% off up to $10 the next day after a 50-point game with promo code. Terms apply. No purchase necessary. Ends April 13th. Open to U.S. residents 21 and older. Visit DoorDashInYourBag.com for full details. DoorDash in your bag all season long. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen. Today and every day, we are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Join over 12,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. Watch us on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network every weekday at 10:30 a.m. And on game days as well in the evening. Programming, nope. I know a lot of y'all have been saying congratulations, and I see all the comments, even if I'm not always commenting in there and replying. I see them all, and I truly appreciate it all. This is my last show for about 3 weeks. I will be back on December 15th, I believe is going to be the date. I'm getting married literally tomorrow, y'all. I will not be at the Pelicans-Hawks game. Dylan Sanders is going to take on the show while I'm enjoying newlywed life for a minute as we go on our honeymoon here. Again, thank you for all the congratulations. That really, really means a lot. It means a lot that you take time out of your day to just listen to Locked On Pelicans, let alone comment, let alone say, like, you're happy for me, which you don't have to do. So I greatly appreciate you all taking the time out of your day for the show to comment, whatever it might be. If you ever see me at the arena, please say hi. Sometimes y'all call and I'm like moving and I can barely hear it and I don't know where it came from. Come up to me and say hi if you ever see me. I'm always happy to talk Pelicans. We do this show for y'all. For your second listen, by the way, Locked On Saints, Ross Jackson. He's actually one of the officiants of the wedding, so that's kind of fun. So he will be there tomorrow as well. So make Locked On Saints your second listen today. They might win this game at home with a new QB. Ross Jackson making sense of everything black and gold. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now the #1 sports podcast network. So let's get into some things that James Borrego is doing. You know, first I wanted to look at some of the stats, and I've been kind of like keeping track of some of these things like pace, passes per game, and all of that to see kind of like where this team is falling. Are things fundamentally different? And we're not expecting big changes here. We are not expecting big changes from James Borrego this early. With this homestand, they've barely had time to practice. I don't think people get how little NBA teams have the ability to practice or time to practice during the season. You're lucky if you get like one during a week. So I'm pulling up their like weekly schedule here so that you can kind of get what it all kind of looks like. So this week, let me pull up when the Pelicans have a practice. They have one practice this week, Monday, they played against the Thunder, no practice. Tuesday was an off day because it was on a back-to-back. Sunday and then Monday. Tuesday, off day. Wednesday, you play the Nuggets. Thursday, today that I'm recording this, practice, and then they get on a plane, travel to Dallas. Friday, they play against Dallas, immediately get on a plane and fly back. Saturday, they have a game against the Hawks, and then Sunday, they're off because of the back-to-back. You have 7 days here, and you have one practice. You have some shoot-arounds in here, but you're not going to overwork guys doing all of that. You want to kind of put in what you have. Borrego has not had time to really do big changes, make big changes that he might want. But you are seeing some different things here. And some of this is also influenced by the opponents that they're playing. But one thing that I want to focus on quickly, I don't actually want to focus on the stats with this a ton. One of the things, though, that jumped out to me is pace is slightly up. You hear every team, play with pace, play with pace. Pace is important because it measures the number of possessions you get per game. That's what it is. It has nothing to do with the individual possessions themselves, whether you're passing the ball or anything. That's called tempo. Pace is just simply a measurement of how many possessions you get per game. If you have 50 offensive possessions, that's 50 chances to score. If you have 75 offensive possessions, that's 75 chances to score. Higher pace equates essentially to more chances to score. It doesn't mean you're good at it, but it just means you have more opportunities to score. The team with higher pace likely is going to score more points per game than a team with a lower pace. But here's the thing. Pace is equivalent for both teams usually in an NBA game. If my team scores, your team gets the ball, right? So you essentially each get one possession and it goes back and forth. So you essentially, when you look at pace at the end of the game and measure this, the biggest difference could be 4 possessions. And so you have that kind of opportunity to get a few more possessions than your opponent, but you're essentially getting the same thing. So pace can also be dictated by your opponent. If they're grinding out the shot clock and using it all, you're going to have fewer offensive possessions because time is ticking down. So pace is important, but can be influenced by opponents. But the Pelicans' pace is slightly up. They were 27th in the league in terms of pace under Willie Green. They're up to 8th under James Borrego. It's too small of a sample size, and it comes to about 3 possessions per game more. On the high end, you're looking at potentially 9 points more if you make all of those per game. That's significant. Don't get me wrong. So it's there. It's up. I wouldn't say it's a paradigm shifter, but it's definitely up. So you're seeing the team try and do this. For the most part, the other numbers that you would be looking at, are they passing the ball more, is essentially the same. They're getting into transition about the same amount of times. The one thing that did jump out at me here in terms of like the pure numbers is the average speed of the players is up. They're actually playing a little bit faster, like they're moving quicker. That kind of goes to that speed, violence, force, aggression that James Borrego has wanted. Maybe that's simply that the team responding to a head coaching change and being like, oh boy, we got to be better, so let's try a little bit harder. One thing, though, I think you are seeing is them using Zion Williamson and Derik Queen, and it's really only been one game under James Borrego, but I thought that was actually pretty creative. And we'll focus a little bit more on it in the next segment here. But I liked what we saw from them with that. You saw Zion Williamson a little bit more off ball than he normally is with Derik Queen out there. The fact that Queen can pass and can do so from the 3-point line or around the free throw line, pulling your bigs out of the paint, has actually done a lot of things to allow more cutting over the ball. You know, Zion Williamson doesn't quite operate in that regard in terms of passing, and he's not a passer like Şengün or Nikola Jokic is. Like Queen is more in that mold. Zion is more drive downhill, drive and kick than anything else, though he has some passes in his repertoire. Queen, being taller, can see over the defense and has a ton of good court vision to be able to make those reads. When you put Zion at the top of the 3-point line, Queen up there with him or on the free throw line, everyone is out of the paint. They're trying to double team Zion Williamson to not let him get a full head of steam and attack downhill. You put someone on Queen to kind of disrupt some of the passing too, and I think that's looked really good. And all of a sudden now, on the baseline, there's tons of room for guys to just cut baseline. You saw Queen get it to Trey Murphy. You saw Herb Jones as well. And guys cutting baseline a lot and giving you more off-ball movement with that because of the way these double bigs were being used. There's an offensive set called a horn set, which you can run with this sort of thing, which almost inverts what it normally would be. You have your guards, your wings, your bigs down low, kind of going down from the 3-point line. Pull the big men out of the paint, put them a little bit higher up. I'm describing this. It's a little bit more complex, but that's essentially it. You put the big men around the free throw line or higher, even on the 3-point line with a kind of guard in between them. And that's essentially a horn set, and it pulls guys out of the paint and allows for a lot of off-ball movement here. You need big men, though, that can facilitate or hit some of those shots. They can score from those areas. Zion can drive from there. Queen can just use his footwork to get to the rim and score like we saw him do against Jokic and the Denver Nuggets a bunch. This is a way that they could kind of revolutionize their offense during the season, and it worked pretty well, I thought, during this game against Denver. You also saw Micah Peavy. This was a big difference. Get a whole lot more playing time under James Borrego than head coach Willie Green. As the Pelicans started to come back in this game, it was not that starting lineup. Jeremiah Fears was out of the game, and they were closing with Micah Peavy instead, whether it was for his defense or maybe a little bit more of the shooting be more consistent. You saw that from him. So they're finding new things. It's going to take a little bit of a while till it influences the statistics, and there's a large enough sample size for us to kind of believe in some of that stuff. But just based on the eye test of what they were doing offensively in this game with Derik Queen, with Zion Williamson, was very encouraging that these two could actually work together. There were big concerns if Queen and Zion could coexist, and if you could play them together. And I was one of the people being like, I'm not entirely sure. This was actually pretty creative offense in what they were doing, and I thought it worked really, really well. It requires Zion Williamson off ball. That's something that we're going to need to monitor. He doesn't do the best in those kind of roles. He did good enough against the Denver Nuggets. So there's a small sample size that says, you should try this more. And I'm excited to see what they do, because Borrego definitely can figure out an offense that works with all of these guys. So coming up next, attendance wasn't great. Is that a problem? I want to dive into that a little bit. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Prize Picks. We make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this sports season. Whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both, there's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. You pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere Prize Picks operates, including California, Texas, Georgia, Louisiana. I've been using Prize Picks during both football Sundays and NBA tip-offs. It just makes everything a little bit more exciting. You can take Trey Murphy to go for more than 17.5 points is what he had in this game, and you would have won. And the stacks feature is a game changer. You can pick more on Trey's points, rebounds, and assists in the same lineup. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. Subscribe, watch us on YouTube, watch us on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Comment down below as well. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now the #1 sports podcast network. So wrapping up the show before I go on a break. This is really, I'll be honest, this is like, I don't have kids, but this is like my baby, even though it's not quite mine. It's Locked On's. But like not doing the show, which I've been doing for 10 years now, like we're at like 2,500 episodes that I've hosted of this show. I would imagine to some degree, and those of y'all with kids, like yell at me in the comments. Is this what it's like when like you go on your first like date night after you have a kid and like a babysitter's watching it, and like, do you actually enjoy your dinner, your meal, and you're kind of freaking out the whole time? Because that's kind of what it feels like. I know Dylan Sanders is going to do great. I picked him to do this for that reason. And he's going to be awesome, and I will miss doing the show. And don't worry, I'm coming right back. You're not getting rid of me. I'm still the full-time host. Dylan will still be a regular on the show after this. But it feels weird. It's got me a little bit emotional in a sense here. I do this, this team is not the most fun to cover. Let's be honest here. I do this because of this community, the interactions with y'all, the fans, and just being part of something that feels really good to be part of. So I feel very honored to host the show, even if this team, y'all. I keep that in mind when there's rough seasons like this, and I see the fan base kind of be as frustrated as it's probably ever been in the 15 years that I've been covering this. I probably need to start saying that in the open of the show. 15 years, seeing this group just be the most frustrated with some of the decisions, and going to these games against good teams, the Warriors, the Lakers, and the arena really not being full. The Denver Nuggets crowd was really not great. on Wednesday. Seeing that apathy hurts because there is a passionate fan base here, and hearing some of the stuff about, oh, they should relocate or whatever. Like, one, they're not. I was on NBA TV the other day and I said they are not relocating. There's no concern about them relocating. But it hurts to see. It hurts to see the fan base kind of hurting and frustrated, and more than anything, being apathetic. Screaming, yelling, being angry. I think, I've worked in customer service and other things, and you see some of that, and it just means those people care. And so when you hear people get angry or be frustrated, I'm encouraged by that sort of stuff, because it means this matters to somebody, right? When you're angry about the team and frustrated with the team and screaming, sometimes at me, rightfully or not, in the comments down below, it means you care, and that's actually a good thing. The people running the team, the high people should hear that and be like, oh, we have people that this matters to. It's when you're quiet, when you just stop caring, when you stop showing up, that's when it gets concerning. And you are seeing a little bit of that level here, I think, with this fan base. So it pains me to see. I want this team to be good, just as much as anybody else here. So hopefully they can kind of turn this around. Hopefully over the next couple of weeks, they start winning a little bit more, and you start to see some positive improvements that excite the fan base, because there is a lot to like with this team. It's also just fun being a fan and being part of this group. So as I take a bit of a leave here, and I'll be back, I said that, I appreciate y'all so much. I appreciate all of you listeners so unbelievably much, whether you recently started listening, whether you've been with me from my blogging days back on bourbonstreetshots.com, then before that, Hornets 24/7. 15 years of doing this is the longest I'm ever going to take a break from the team or have. So it's a little bit weird. But I just want to say thank you to everybody. Thank you for all the kind words. Thank you for all the excitement about the wedding, the marriage. I'm very excited too. As always, except for the next 3 weeks, I'm your host. I'm literally going to tear up. Jake Madison, at Nola Jake on Twitter. I will not be with y'all next time. That will be Dylan Sanders on Monday. I will be back with y'all on December 15th, and I cannot wait to see y'all then. Hopefully a little tan maybe from me as well. I'll see y'all mid-December.